What if the secret to a long, happy life isn't some grand, singular purpose that you have to spend your whole life searching for? What if it's much quieter, much closer? A simple reason to get out of bed each morning. A feeling woven into the very fabric of your day. In Japan, there is a word for this, Ikigai, a reason for being. But this isn't a story about a word. It's a story about a feeling I had completely lost. My life, from the outside, looked perfect. I had a great job as a senior graphic designer at a big tech company. I had a nice apartment in the city, the kind with big windows and a minimalist aesthetic that's supposed to make you feel calm. My salary was more than comfortable. I had checked all the boxes I was told to check. And yet every morning, I'd wake up and stare at the ceiling, feeling a profound sense of nothing. The work was demanding, sure, but it felt meaningless. I would spend a whole week adjusting the shade of blue on a button that would trick people into signing up for something they didn't need. My passion, the art I loved since I was a child, had been turned into a tool for increasing corporate engagement by 0.5%. My creativity was being measured in clicks. And the disconnect between the person I was and the work I was doing grew into a silent, hollow space inside me. One rainy Tuesday, staring at a screen full of data about user interaction, I snapped. It wasn't a loud, dramatic break. It was a quiet click. I opened a new tab, and without thinking, I booked a one-way ticket to Fukuoka, Japan. I didn't know why. I just knew I had to go somewhere far away from the life that was supposed to be mine. From Fukuoka, I took a series of slow, winding trains, letting the rhythm of the tracks decide my destination. I ended up in a small coastal town that wasn't in any guidebook. The air tasted of salt and pine. Old wooden houses lined narrow streets, and the only sounds were the cawing of gulls and the gentle chime of a distant temple bell. For the first few days I just walked. I walked along the black sand beaches, watching fishermen mend their nets. I walked through the quiet forests, feeling the damp moss under my fingertips. I was just breathing. For the first time in years, I was just breathing. It was on one of these walks that I found it. Tucked away on a side street was a small, unassuming building with a simple sign, a hand-painted piece of wood that just said, "Pottery." Curiosity pulled me in. The air inside was cool and smelled of damp earth and wood smoke. Shelves were filled with beautiful, humble ceramics. Teacups with subtle glazes, rice bowls that felt perfect in your hand, vases that were elegant in their simplicity. In the center of the room, an old man sat at a potter's wheel. His back was straight, his hands covered in wet clay. He was completely absorbed, his entire world seemingly focused on the spinning mound in front of him. He didn't seem to notice me at first. There was no music playing. There was only the soft, rhythmic hum of the wheel and the gentle sound of his hands shaping the clay. It was the most peaceful, focused energy I had ever witnessed. I must have stood there for a long time. Eventually, the wheel slowed to a stop, and he looked up. His face was a landscape of wrinkles, but his eyes were clear and bright. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "Hello," he said, his voice calm. "Welcome." I felt a blush creep up my neck. "I'm sorry," I said. "I didn't mean to disturb you. Your work it's beautiful." He looked at the perfectly formed bowl on his wheel, then back at me. "Thank you. It is a good bowl. It will hold soup well." His response was so simple, so practical. I had expected him to talk about art, about expression. But he talked about purpose. "Are you a potter?" he asked, as he began cleaning his hands in a bucket of water. "No," I laughed. I push pixels around on a screen." The words sounded even more absurd here, in this room that was so tangible, so real. The man, who introduced himself as Kenji, offered me a seat. He made tea, serving it in one of his own cups. The warmth spread through my hands, a simple, grounding sensation. I started visiting his studio every day. Sometimes we would talk. Sometimes we would sit in silence, me watching him work. I learned that he had been a potter in this same studio for over 50 years. His father had been a potter before him. He provided the bowls, plates, and cups for most of the town, for the local inns and restaurants. I once asked him if he ever got bored, making the same things day after day. He looked at me, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Bored?" he repeated, as if the concept was foreign. "Every piece of clay is different. The weather changes how it dries. My mood changes how I shape it. And every bowl has a home to go to. Mrs. Tanaka needs new rice bowls for her grandchildren. The Seaside Inn wants new say-cups for their guests. This isn't the same thing. It is a new thing, every single time. It is needed." What he was describing, though he never used the word, was his Ikigai. I started to see the 4 circles, not as a diagram in a book, but as a living reality in his life. He loved the feeling of the clay, the quiet focus of his craft. That was what he loved. He had decades of practice. His hands moved with an unconscious, expert grace. That was what he was good at. The town needed his creations for their daily lives, for their businesses, for the simple beauty they brought into their homes. That was what the world needed. And by selling his pottery, he earned enough to live a simple, comfortable life. That was what he could be paid for. There was no conflict, no separation. His passion, his mission, his vocation, and his profession were not 4 separate things. They were one. They were Kenji, at his wheel, making a bowl for soup. One afternoon he found me sketching the patterns on his shelves in a small notebook. "You have a good eye," he said, peering over my shoulder. "Your lines are steady." "It's what I'm trained to do," I replied, a little sadly. "Then, why are you sad when you speak of it?" he asked. His question was gentle, but it hit me with the force of a physical blow. Why was I sad? I loved to draw. I loved creating things. I was good at it. I was paid for it. 3 of the circles were there. The missing piece was the 4th one. What the world needs. My work didn't feel needed. It felt extractive. It took people's time and attention and gave nothing of real value back. It was a beautiful engine, expertly designed, that produced only smoke. That day Kenji gestured to a lump of clay. "Here," he said. "Your hands are bored. Make something." My first attempt was a disaster. A wobbly, pathetic lump that collapsed on itself. Kenji just chuckled. "The clay does not know you yet," he said. "And you do not know the clay. You must introduce yourselves." So I kept trying. Day after day. My hands, so used to the slick, sterile surface of a mouse, learned the gritty, living texture of clay. I wasn't good at it. I couldn't be paid for it. But I loved it. And in that studio, helping him glaze simple cups or wedge clay, I felt a sense of purpose. I was doing something small, but real. I wasn't just pushing pixels. I was creating something that would hold tea. It was a tiny thing, but it was needed. I didn't stay in that town forever. I knew I couldn't. But when I went back to my life, I was different. The hollow space was still there, but it wasn't an empty void anymore. It felt more like a space waiting to be filled. I didn't quit my job. That was the surprising part. Quitting felt like another dramatic act, not a real solution. Instead, I saw my job in a new light. It was no longer my entire identity. It was what I could be paid for. It was the engine that could fund what I loved and what the world needed. I started a small project on the side. I used my design skills to create websites for local charities for free. I redesigned the menu for the struggling family-owned restaurant down the street. Then I started a weekend workshop teaching digital art skills to kids from low-income neighborhoods, opening up a world for them that they couldn't otherwise access. The joy on their faces when they created something for the first time, that was my fourth circle. That was the what the world needs I had been missing. My life is no longer a single straight line. It's a combination of things. There's the job that pays the bills. There's the volunteer work that brings meaning. There's the personal art that brings me joy. My Ikigai wasn't one thing. It was the intersection of all of them. It's not a destination you arrive at. It's a path you walk, every day. It's the balance you find between your own desires and the needs of the small world around you. So ask yourself, what do you love so much you could lose track of? Time. What are you good at? Perhaps so good you take it for granted. What does your little corner of the world, your community, your family, truly need? And what can you do that allows you to sustain yourself? Your Ikigai might not be a single roaring fire. It might be a constellation of small, quiet lights. The question is, what lights are waiting for you to connect them?